From the Victory Studios in downtown Little Rock, this is Capitol View with your host, David Goins.
And good morning. Thanks for being with us. Welcome into Capitol View. It's a lot going on this Thanksgiving weekend. We trust it's been a time to give thanks for many blessings, family, friends, and of course, food. Plenty to get to on this Sunday morning. Congressman-elect French Hill is with us in studio, but we start with that Thanksgiving theme. The Republican Party choosing Arkansas's newest senator to deliver its weekly address for Thanksgiving week. Tom Cotton offering prayers of thanks and comfort to members of the military and their families. Take a listen.
For many, there will be no homecoming this week. From Afghanistan to Iraq to Korea, our troops continue to patrol the world to bring peace and security for us all. From Marines in Liberia to sailors across the oceans to airmen over the Asian skies to the sentinel standing guard at the Tomb of the Unknowns at Arlington National Cemetery, these troops will sacrifice the comforts of family and home so we can enjoy them.
And speaking of the military, Senator-elect Cotton expected to land on either the Senate Armed Services Intelligence or Foreign Relations Committee. Lawmakers get a look at a number of options to deal with prison overcrowding. The Bureau of Legislative Research presenting the multifaceted approach on Monday. It includes not only a $231 million bond for a new prison, but also alternative facilities for low-risk offenders. Now, most of the suggestions lawmakers have seen before, like converting unused school buildings for reentry programs. That's an idea supported by Cabinet Senator Eddie Joe Williams. Now, a new prison would be funded by a $2 increase in car tag fees. That will have to go through the legislature when the session starts in January. Well, another victory this week for Arkansans fighting for same-sex marriage rights. A federal judge ruled on Tuesday afternoon that the state's ban on gay marriage is unconstitutional. Voters passed Amendment 83 10 years ago, defining marriage as between a man and a woman. U.S. District Judge Christine Baker ruled that that violates the 14th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. Judge Baker stayed that ruling, meaning for now same-sex marriage still not legal in the state of Arkansas. The Arkansas Supreme Court and the 8th Circuit Court in St. Louis are both deliberating separate but similar cases. A ruling from either could be what ultimately decides whether gay couples can get married here.
And when people say to me, well, you know, I'm sick and tired of being called a bigot because I don't agree with gay marriage or believe in it, you know, I tell them I'm sick and tired of having my precious, loving, committed marriage to my husband Gary called something that's an abomination.
What I'm afraid that we're creating is a society in which lots and lots of people choose never to marry, but they continue having children.
Now, Arkansas Supreme Court is expected to rule on its case before the end of the year. This federal court case now goes on an appeal most likely to the 8th Circuit in St. Louis. Now, as of this week, same-sex marriage legal in 35 states, with 7 others, including Arkansas, currently in that appeals situation. That number includes Mississippi, where a federal judge struck down that ban just hours after the decision here in Arkansas. Former State Treasurer Martha Schaffner will not go to a trial for a second time following a request from the U.S. Attorney's Office. Federal judge this week dismissed federal mail fraud charges against her. Schaffner was accused of misusing campaign donations. She already has been convicted of federal bribery and extortion charges and a pay-to-play scheme involving a bond broker from Russellville. The U.S. attorney says evidence that would have been heard in that latest trial will instead be heard during sentencing. No word yet when that will be, most likely early in 2015. More Arkansas children born with illegal drugs in their system. That's according to a new state report tracking child neglect. Garrett's Law was created back in 2005 to expand the definition of child neglect in Arkansas to include any illegal substances found in the child or mother at birth, and was named after a child born into those circumstances. The latest report finds the number of referrals for investigation under Garrett's Law on the rise. The state received 867 such referrals for the 12-month period that ended on June 30th. That's up from 16% from last year and 51% from just 3 years ago. The Department of Human Services telling lawmakers on Tuesday what's behind the rise.
We've noted is that marijuana is the most commonly mentioned illegal substance, and it has been for a number of years. It's also the drug that we see the most often in our child fatalities.
DHS added that 93% of Garrett Law referrals, once they were investigated, were actually substantiated as true in 2014. Well, a prosecutor here in Central Arkansas promising to do everything possible to put a convict granted clemency 10 years ago back behind bars. John Henry Claiborne's case made headlines twice when he was released from prison and when former Governor Mike Huckabee ran for president 6 years ago. Capitol View's Drew Petrimo talked to that prosecutor who's once again frustrated by a pardon he says never should have happened.
He does not want, nor does he deserve, the merciful side of the justice system.
John Claiborne's been on prosecutor Larry Jegley's radar since 1993.
He had committed an unspeakable home invasion robbery of two elderly retired folks.
But 10 years later, Jegley was standing in front of cameras complaining that Claiborne been let free.
He got 340 years in 1994, and now he's out on the streets.
Claiborne was granted clemency by then Governor Mike Huckabee, who at the time responded to Jegley's criticism.
The loud voices that you've heard have made it appear like that there's just this panic in the streets, that there's people being let out every day that shouldn't be, and that simply has never been the case.
But Jegley says Claiborne's behavior since he was released shows that his worries were justified. In 2007, he was arrested for drug possession, 2008, DUI, and on November 13th of this year, North Little Rock police pulled him over near the intersection of Pike Avenue and 18th Street. After smelling marijuana, officers say they searched the car, found 6.5 pounds of pot and 2 pounds of meth.
Do you regret pushing for his clemency?
I don't regret helping people at all.
Bishop Charles Williams, a longtime friend of Governor Huckabee, had advocated for Claiborne's release.
He has a wife, they have children, he's built a family. I thought he was doing real well.
No one picked up on the only number listed on a police report detailing Claiborne's latest arrest, but Jegley says he will have to answer to justice.
Make sure that John Henry Claiborne doesn't have another chance to thumb his nose at the community.
And Claiborne did post a $50,000 bond earlier this week and is out of jail once again. Coming up after a quick break, Central Arkansas's newest representative in Congress joins me. I'll talk to French Hill about what he hopes to see after he's sworn in on January 3rd. I'm David Goins. You're enjoying a holiday weekend edition of Capitol View.
There are lots of ways to show your appreciation. At Denver Mattress, we say thank you with savings. Right now, you can save big on our best-selling Summit Queen mattress, just $199. And during our Live It Up event, you can save up to $500 on a Tempur-Pedic mattress with adjustable base. Quality, service, selection, and value. Why shop anywhere else? Get a great price on a better night's sleep from Denver Mattress, your Tempur-Pedic elite retailer.
Throughout life, you celebrate milestones that mark life-changing moments for your family. And as you age, there may be more challenges. CareLink is here to help homebound older people get the services they need to stay at home as long as possible. From home care to emergency response tools, we help you find the resources you need for continued independent living. CareLink, resources for older people and their families.
Julie? Wow, you look tired. I got up at 3 a.m. for Black Friday, but I saved hundreds. How'd you make out?
I slept in, still saved thousands.
Oh.
Getting 20% cash back anywhere else might save you hundreds, but at your GMC dealer, it will save you thousands. Today through Monday is your last chance to make your best deal on a GMC Sierra 1500 in stock the longest and get cash back for 20% of the MSRP. That's almost $9,700 on the Sierra. But hurry, after Monday, this deal is over.
Okay, buddy, what's your favorite kind of Cheerios?
Honey Nut. But chocolate is my other favorite. But apple cinnamon is my favorite too. And fruity. Oh yeah, and frosty.
Okay, but what's your most favorite of all?
The kind I have with you.
Me too.
Watching Capitol View, Sunday morning talk focused on the political scene in Arkansas.
And welcome back to Capitol View on this Thanksgiving edition. We are joined now by our guest this morning, Congressman-elect French Hill from the 2nd District. Good morning, sir. Welcome to Capitol View again.
Good morning, David. Pleasure to be back. Hope you had a good Thanksgiving.
Absolutely. And, on Thanksgiving week, I wanted to ask, anyone I talk to is, what are you thankful for this holiday season?
Well, I'm thankful for the love of my family. That's number one.
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, so let's look at the week that you had in D.C. This last week, and really the most recent thing is your appointment to the Financial Services Committee. For those who maybe don't know every D.C., every Congress committee by heart, kind of explain what that committee does and what you think your role will be on that committee.
Yeah, I was pleased to be appointed to the Financial Services Committee, which is the House of Representatives Banking and Finance Committee. They look at things that affect commercial banking, consumer credit, securities, stock brokerage type issues. So those are important issues to our economy to make sure credit flows and that people are able to get the credit they need to buy a house or start a business.
Okay. What movement maybe do you expect in that committee, when the Congress starts in January? I mean, how do you see maybe, what's the work of that committee maybe for this session?
Well, from my point of view, listening through the campaign, people want me to focus on things that will focus on the economy growing again. And so I hope to listen in that committee and look for opportunities where I can put forward policies that will help our economy grow faster, create more jobs.
And that was one thing you did talk about during the campaign, was this idea of a kind of a stagnant economy, wanting to get the recovery going quicker. Given the dynamic in Washington, do you see maybe legislation that could be coming down the pike, or what do you see in that respect?
Well, one thing in the Financial Services Committee that I heard about on the campaign is the complexity in getting a home mortgage now. Some of the changes that were made in Dodd-Frank, which was a bill passed right after the recession, have seemed to make it harder for consumers to get credit for a home, and that's one thing I want to particularly look at.
Do you think there's the Congress could make changes along those lines, given I know there's already a seemingly pretty difficult relationship with the president right now?
Yeah. Well, from my view, if you go narrow as opposed to comprehensive, you can find people on both sides of the aisles that want to get something done when you have a more specific targeted action to work on. And I think if we talk about mortgage availability, cost of mortgages, what Dodd-Frank's done to maybe slow that down or curtail it, that's something that people on both sides can focus on.
Feel pretty optimistic going in? I mean, everyone's optimistic on first day in
people,
January.
Of course they are, but I'm optimistic because I believe that people are focused on getting the economy to grow more, and that people are focused on economic growth. They're not just Republicans, they're Democrats too.
Makes sense. We kind of want to turn to what we saw almost 2 weeks ago now with the executive action taken by the president relating to deferred action for about 2 to 3 million undocumented immigrants. Your thoughts on that decision and the overall picture of immigration reform?
Yeah. Well, I thought it was a controversial decision for the president to take that action prior to the new Congress coming back to Washington. He clearly was making a political point to take that action before both the House and Senate are governed by Republicans in this new Congress. So I thought it was a controversial decision. I personally don't agree with the decision. I think he should have come in with the new Congress and worked on a new immigration bill built around things that there's some agreement on. And that's what I would have preferred his approach to be.
Do you see that particular decision? I mean, some have talked about, they've used terms like poison the well and all these different, kind of superlatives about, what it could mean for the dynamic within Congress. Do you think that will have a detrimental effect in working with the president?
Well, I think it has weakened his hand in working with both houses, the Senate and the House, because it really was a provocative step on his part as opposed to perhaps making a list of things that we could agree on both sides to move the immigration issue forward. So there's no doubt he burned a few bridges with his decision.
Do you see any action being taken on immigration? Because Speaker Boehner essentially said, this essentially kind of kind of ends it here. Do you think that that's a fair estimate going into this?
Well, you know, my personal view is I'm open-minded. If there are things that both the House and the Senate can agree on that move our immigration challenges forward in the area of border security or expanded visas for people who want to come here and study and work, or a worker program to make it easier to come in and out of the United States to work seasonally. Those are the kinds of things I think could be constructive and that would have support on both sides.
Well, I guess the bigger question, what about the folks who have been here for a long time? That's kind of the big unanswered question. What, what about, is there any path to citizenship, for those people?
I just don't know what that path is, and I don't know what consensus that is. I think that's where the president was coming from, is he doesn't see that consensus either. That is the toughest issue for the Congress to deal with. It's one that requires more work. And I think it has to be centered again on, are we implementing and enforcing our existing immigration laws now? Do we have a secure border? Because if one takes the president's step, aren't you really encouraging actually more illegal immigration if you don't have the full immigration system working? So the system is broken, and I don't believe the president's action really enhances it.
And one more on immigration before we take a quick break. The Senate bill that was passed in 2013, the House never did, take up action on that bill. From your perspective, now going into the Congress and knowing what you know, what's good about what the Senate passed and maybe what wasn't that you think maybe held the House up?
Yeah. Well, I think what the House should do and should have done then and should do in the spring is put together their list of a constructive immigration bill from their perspective, pass it, and see where it goes between conference between the two houses of Congress and what the president's view is. And it may be much more narrow. It may be much more focused on border security, and that's fine. But I think we should put forward our own ideas.
Okay, so a lot of people have talked about that conferencing, and that's something that could happen perhaps next year. Okay. All right, well, can you stick around a little more?
Sure, happy to.
Absolutely. Okay, our guest is French Hill this morning. We'll be back after a quick break. You're watching Capitol View on Sunday morning.
KARK Ford is pleased to be in compliance with the Federal Children's Television Act and provide children's educational programming Saturdays from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. Broadcast licensees must file with the FCC a quarterly children's television programming report. This report is available at KARK for public view. 1401 West Capitol Avenue, Suite 104, Little Rock, Arkansas 72201.
What's that?
Subway Big Hot Pastrami.
Pastrami?
No, pastrami.
Pastrami!
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 Get your own Subway Big Hot Pastrami Melt, a monument to flavor loaded with dry rub, pepper-crusted beef, mustard, and pickles. Subway, eat fresh.
Attention, Medicare beneficiaries in Arkansas. Please listen closely, especially if you have Medicare and Medicaid. You may be eligible for a Medicare Advantage plan from WellCare Health Plans for no monthly premium. Call 1-866-547-4338 right now to see if you qualify. WellCare provides access to local and regional network doctors and hospitals and benefits like dental, vision, and hearing. Over-the-counter drugs, a 24/7 nurse hotline, plus prescription coverage. Call now, 1-866-547-4338. Representatives will provide you detailed information and help see if you qualify. There are no costs or obligations to determine eligibility. WellCare is contracted with Medicare to provide plans that may be perfect for you. It's time to feel better about your Medicare. Call 1-866-547-4338 today.
However you plan to celebrate the season, at Kroger, you'll find low prices on everything you need to make it a party to remember. Share a little holiday joy with Kroger.
You're watching Capitol View, Sunday morning talk focused on the political scene in Arkansas.
And welcome back to Capitol View. We now rejoin our guest this morning, Congressman-elect French Hill from the 2nd District here in Central Arkansas. His first interview, I think, since the election in November. Any reflections on the campaign? Anything looking back? It's been almost a month now. Did it go well?
Sure, I loved campaigning. My family loved campaigning. It was a great one-year experience to meet people across our state, particularly in the 7 counties of the 2nd District. But I'm really ready to roll my shirt sleeves up now and go to work for the people of Arkansas instead of campaigning. And you talked about, obviously, the committee assignments you have in D.C. You got to kind of see D.C. for a week, but also talk to me about, the idea of, congressmen come back to home and you need to be connected to the 7 counties here in Arkansas. How do you make sure you keep that line, well oiled so people know that you're connected? Well, the Constitution set up the House of Representatives for our representatives to run every 2 years to keep them close to the people. So I think the #1 function for a congressperson really is to do constituent service, to focus on what are important to our governor, to our county judges, to the citizens in the district. People have an issue and a problem with the federal government. I hope they'll call my office and let me tend to help them with that issue, whether it's a veterans issue or a Social Security challenge. And also focus again on economic development. What can we do working with, again, county judges, local businesses, chambers of commerce to help move our ball forward on growing our economy here in Central Arkansas? One thing that pops to mind when you say that is, being in touch with local constituents is the Highway Trust Fund. Everyone talks about, money to build highways. That's part of economic development. Right. What do you see, what does Congress need to get done there? Yeah, Congress has a big chore there because they need to reauthorize the Highway Trust Fund. And what they've done the past few years is simply use general revenue to appropriate money necessary to keep the ball going on the highway funds. So that'll be a challenge for this Congress, is to how do you structure that for the long term, because highway projects are, by definition, take a long time to plan and a long time to implement. So I look forward to hearing the ideas in Congress on that topic. Okay, and while we got you here, a couple weeks ago, we had statements from a former Obamacare architect, essentially, Jonathan Gruber, from MIT, pretty well known. We talked about it last week on Capitol View as well. Not so much thoughts on what he said about the healthcare law, about subsidies and things that are available, through the exchange. More to the point of your thoughts on the fact, I guess the Supreme Court will take up a case that deals with kind of, subsidies and exchanges. What do you think that means potentially for well, I think we need to see what that means to see if that's going to change how the federal government is going to pass through those subsidies to the states. But it brings up this whole issue of, I think there was a rush to judgment about creating the Affordable Care Act. I've talked about this really for a year now, that it was a super expensive, complex way to try to expand affordable health care. And it had the core of that are the mandates and the box of services that the federal government mandates, both at the state level and to individuals and businesses. And I sure hope in the Congress we can find some ways to really replace that mechanism and move towards what I think is a patient-centered, competitive, more free enterprise approach to creating affordable health care for our families. I know people have talked about this repeal concept, which seems unlikely given the fact the president's there till January 2017. Right. But you mentioned in other facets of this narrow approach, what are some potential surgical narrow things do you think could maybe be more palatable? The president himself has changed the act some with controversy, in that some people don't believe he actually has the authority to do that. Delaying the mandates. Correct. So there obviously are a lot of things about this act that are misplaced and misguided, and I would love to hear from constituents about the things that they think are impeding affordable health care and not creating the kinds of things that we should have, to look for change. Because I agree that we'll have to do changes over the next couple of years with President Obama, only that we can get through both houses of Congress and get a presidential signature on. And that'll probably be, as you note, a more narrow list of things. So more of a scalpel approach? To keep the medical analogy going, I think the Axon needs a lot of work.
Okay, but I mean, full repeal, I know that was a popular moniker for some candidates.
Right.
Well,
I think people have talked about, you know, this concept of repeal and replace, which is to say there are things that were contained in the Affordable Health Care Act that were constructive, but there are things that desperately need to be changed to deliver a more competitive, patient-centered, more affordable approach.
Okay. Congressman French Hill, thanks so much for joining us on a holiday
David,
weekend.
thank you. A pleasure. Good to be with you.
Good deal. All right. Congressman-elect French Hill, our guest this morning. He takes office January of 2015. We'll be back to wrap up this edition of Capitol View.
Welcome to Toyotathon.
Hi.
Like the Tundra?
Yeah, it's a great looking truck.
Yeah, and you can do awesome things with it. Did you just do something awesome in your head?
Yes. Yes, I did.
Toyotathon is on. Right now, drive a dependable new 2014 Tundra Double Cab V8 for only $309 a month for 23 months with $1,849 due at signing.
There's a whole world of awesome out there.
Toyota, let's go places.
There's 4 days to save big during the Black 4 Day sale at Furniture Row.
Honey, I got a free 50-inch TV with our new living room group. Honey, I got 20% off home decor. Honey, I scored a sweet new bedroom set for the guest room and no interest until 2018. We're going to Disney.
Score the best deals of the year at the Black 4 Day sale. Beautiful designs, comfortable prices. Furniture Row.
Wolfgang Puck has done it again with the Wolfgang Puck Pressure Oven, designed to transform mealtime from ordinary to extraordinary in a fraction of the time of a conventional oven.
I would like every family to sit down in the evening and have a great meal together. And finally, we have an oven where the food cooks faster, the juices stay inside your meat, and the flavors get infused. You can roast in it, bake in it, toast in it, broil in it. This will be the only oven you will ever need.
The Wolfgang Puck Pressure Oven seals to lock in heat and moisture under low pressure, cooking evenly up to 70% faster. You can cook a whole 14-pound turkey in just 55 minutes. You get the Wolfgang Puck Pressure Oven for just 5 payments of only $49.99. We'll even ship it for free. It's all backed by a 60-day money-back guarantee. Transform mealtime from ordinary to extraordinary.
You will have results you never dreamt of
with a Wolfgang Puck Pressure Oven. Order now.
KARK4 News, your local election headquarters. You're watching Capitol View, Sunday morning talk focused on the political scene in Arkansas.
And welcome back to Capitol View. I'm David Goins. That wraps it up for this edition of the show. Don't forget you can stay up to date with Arkansas politics by following us on Twitter at Capitol View AR. And download the Capitol View smartphone app in the iTunes App Store or Google Play if you haven't yet. It's waiting there for you. Well, enjoy the remainder of your Thanksgiving holiday weekend. We'll see the rest of y'all back here next week for an all-new edition of Capitol View.